You're listening to the Beat Motel Podcast, and we need to warn you that we like to use words like fuck, shit, and syndicalist, butty scruttox, angry flap, and foot biscuits. And we don't often bleep those words out, apart from because we're not complete animals. But if you understand that and you like music, then listen on. Hey, this is Beat Motel Podcast episode 96, and in this episode I'm joined by Dr. Sam, and we're going to be talking about Taco Bell bowel disorders. We're going to talk about David Bowie trying really hard to be weird and just failing. We're going to talk about the fact Metallica is shit. I mean, objectively shit. We're going to introduce the Dull Bastards music theory, and then we're going to talk about Blur and their rapping phase. Did you know about that? Okay, well, you're going to find out in this episode. We're going to talk about Gwar making all meals taste like salmon. We're going to talk about Coke cans and jumper sleeves and snogging concussions at high school. We're going to talk about Kerry King being a shit guitarist. Objectively. We're going to talk about Rimmer from Red Dwarf covering the Beastie Boys. That's in here. We're going to talk about Radiohead ripping off Teenage Fan Club with the most generic plodding indie you've ever heard. So, this episode, like all our episodes, contains controversial opinions and fruity language. Listener discretion is advised. Let's crack on. Ow, I hit my hand.
Hello. So that was just your beard then?
Just my beard. If I wake up and I've sprung a beard overnight, I now know not to shave it off, because the only way I'm going to be able to grow enough stubble to shave swear words into is if I don't shave it off each time it happens.
Do you ever do role play with your wife where you wear a fake beard?
Do role play with rice?
With your wife?
Oh, no, a beard doesn't suit her at all.
It gives you something to hold on to.
No, I put on the Mexican wrestling mask. She just holds on to the eye sockets. Oh God, I'm going to stop making a disclaimer telling people this is a music podcast, because it's just become this whatever the hell we want to talk about podcast. So
today we're going to talk about football. No, we're not.
We're going to talk about shopping and running while you're shopping.
the best sort of running. Yeah.
And then, because we both have IBS, it's going to end up with talking about having the runs whilst shopping.
Oh, running whilst shopping with the runs.
Right, let's have your riff of the week, Dr. Sam. You know that clanky bass sound that punk bands love so much?
So good.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not normally a fan. It grates on me after a while, but that's the perfect use of it. That's where it's absolutely perfect. That's driving that forward like a Lemmy Kilmister. Who was that?
Citric Dummies with the song "Look Out World" brackets. I'm eating at Arby's. I'm not being American. I only know Arby's for its reputation, and its reputation seems to generally be, and I'm getting this from Jon Stewart, frankly, seems to be that it makes you shit yourself.
They the same said about Taco Bell. There's and the weird thing is, it sort of seeped into the sort of the meme lore of British teenagers, because I heard my daughter and friends, say stuff like, you'll get stomach. They're oddly polite when they're in front of me, so they say, "Oh, you'll get a stomach upset like if you've been to Taco Bell." I only say when they're in front of me because
is there Taco Bell in anywhere near you?
There is one in Lowestoft, which is weird because there's fucking nothing in Lowestoft.
Yeah, they seem to have these random outlets, rather than actually sort of proliferating in a logical fashion. You have random outlets. There's one in Helsinki. I have not been to a Taco Bell since you and I were in the US in
2008, was it?
2009, because that was when Obama actually got into power.
We only know that because we were there.
Yeah, we were there. and we ate a lot of Taco Bell around Massachusetts, and with our friend Jim, and I can't remember it having a particularly bad relationship with my stomach, but I'm also there's a sort of there's one in Helsinki. I've got a morbid curiosity.
They're. I loved it when we went. Hey, giant cat on the screen for the YouTube users. Is that Missy? What's that one called?
That was Tintin. Shut your asshole. There we go.
I loved it when we were taken with Jim, but because that's the first time I'd been to America. And I was like, oh, wow. By the way, listeners and viewers, Sam and I wrote a book about this trip, which has never been released. And I seem to remember really enjoying it because he just got like 2 trays worth of food. He got so much food. And I can remember it being like, wow, how much was that? And he was like, $20. So I took my wife there when I took her back a few months after that and had this really disappointing meal somewhere else. And then the one in Lowestoft. Now, Lowestoft, for anyone who doesn't know, is the most easterly point in Britain. It was a thriving fishing port. It's now, a deprived area. I live in a very deprived area, part of Ipswich. It's like that, but kind of a town. And we've been there several times recently. It's just a classic case of a dead high street that's not being supported by when I say by anyone, I mean by like local government and whatever. It's just, and yet they've got a Taco Bell. So we took me and my dad took my niece and nephew and my daughter out for the day to Lowestoft. Every time I say that, people who live in Suffolk are like, why? But there's a Taco Bell, and we had to catch the train home at 5, and we went into Taco Bell, which is next to the fucking station, at 4:15. And the classic thing where they've got, screens that you order on. You can't really go up to a till to order. So 4:15, we ordered food. The food was finally ready at 3 minutes to 5. So we just had to snatch the bags and just run off. And we only ordered a little burrito each. My dad and my niece had it's called a cheese roll. And I was watching, there was only 2 people there. And I was like, they're not doing anything. They're not doing anything. We got onto the train and ate it. And it was the shittest thing ever. It was like a tortilla about that big that someone had just sprinkled a bit of lettuce on. The cheese roll that my dad and my niece had, no word of a lie, it was a small tortilla. And you get those plastic slices of cheese that you put on burgers. It was one of them rolled up. That was it. So not great. And yet for some reason, I took my wife there a few weeks ago when we were in Lowestoft, and I thought, well, maybe I just didn't order enough stuff, thinking back to Jim ordering absolutely tons. So this time I got several little things, and Emma ordered, they're all like £1.50, £2 each. And Emma ordered a burrito that was about £8. She just went, I know that one. And I was like, okay. Ours was shit again. Really disappointing and rubbish. But Emma's burrito looked absolutely fantastic. So I think I've just been cheaping out on Taco Bell.
Well, maybe, yeah. But I mean, I'm going to bring it back to this band. I discovered this band at some point this week. The delivery of the vocals is sometimes reminiscent of Hanson Brothers, I would say, more than No Means No, or the Ramones. More Hanson Brothers, sort of slightly demented Gurn in the voice, the way he's sort of performing the voice. But it's also got, there's obvious Danzig influence to it. But also, it's just like fucking great 3-chord pop punk, and all the lyrics about the misery of being, I think, American, really, or just human. There's one of my favorite song titles on the. They do that thing that I think Pears did a bit of, which is sort of very knowing, ironic references to classic American punk rock stuff. But there's this, So the album title is called Zen and the Arcade of Beating Your Ass.
Right.
Which is a Husker Du reference. And their song number 10 is called Being Male is Embarrassing.
Fair point. This came up, and there was nothing for me to try and decipher. It's just, this sounds really good. Like when we discovered the dopamines, I want to hear more. I'm going to go hear more. I had the name of the album down as Trapped in a Parking Garage. So they got more than one album. The EP.
Yeah, they've been around for like 7 years now, it would seem. But
So,
I think they've only hit their stride in the last. Having listened to it, they've only hit their stride really in the last sort of year or so. I'd say. No offense, guys, but your last two releases were cracking. The ones before that,
I made a note of the EP name because I have been trapped in a parking garage, and I didn't even think about writing an EP about it. I did write a book about it, which I think might still be on Amazon.
I like the song titles. Look Out World. I'm eating at Arby's. That's the one we just heard. Trapped in a parking garage. Driving a piece of shit is the third track, and the fourth track is called Sit at Home and Die.
I really like bands with themes. I really do. Like Dopamine's, it's like, well, basically substance abuse and self-loathing, I think. I'm not going to start listing bands, but Masked Intruder, another band that started to go, we're going to have a strong theme. And they absolutely have a strong theme.
And I don't know if they're still going, but I imagine they'd have to question that theme with the whole Me Too. Hashtag Me Too.
They were well post that. I think it's so weird. There's being ironic, and then
no, they were pre Me Too. They were like, but yeah. Anyway,
it's always. I would have thought that was rare. Any sensible human would think they were rare anyway.
Yeah,
it's sort of wrapped up in this sort of cuteness. And I can remember we saw them at Brackrock in Belgium, and you just turned to me and just went, all their songs are about being stalkers. I'm just like, they are.
And they had I have to say, they did like two albums on fairly sort of known record label. One was on Fat Wreck. This was Masked Intruder. And their last one, which was like a nothing record label, was really, actually, they really incorporated the doo-wop into the band really well. Because that was their thing of sort of like sickly sweet pop punk, but it crosses that border to doo-wop stuff. Sort of bringing sickly sweet doo-wop into punk, post pop punk. I'm going to stop talking now. I've had too much coffee.
I was enjoying. Yeah, I've just sunk some coffee. I was enjoying you trying to say sickly. Was it sickly doo-wop?
Sickly sweet doo-wop.
Sickly sweet doo-wop. Is that triggered your Android phone to do something?
No, I triggered my wife to send me a message going, "Shut the fuck up."
You got like Sam's going on about fucking doo-wop again. I can sense it from the other side of Helsinki.
Probably can as well. It's got fuck's sake.
Citric Dummies, even that name, we will move on, but the name Citric Dummy, I'll be trying to think, well, what is it? Does it mean dummies like stupid people? Does it mean, would Americans, they call dummies pacifiers, don't they? Because I was thinking like citric, so citric acid, which you use in cooking and whatever. If you dipped a child's dummy and then put it in the mouth, it would make the child scream. So it would be like the opposite of effect of, well, when I was a kid, people used to put whiskey or brandy on the dummy and then give it to the baby. So, but if they don't have dummies in America, this entire point is completely fucking null and void, and I ought to just play my riff of the week.
Yeah, do it.
Do that, yeah. But I'm going to pause this before I play the rest. Do you know what that is?
I'm very familiar with it.
Oh, okay. I'm going to play it. Play then.
That sounds like classic Smashing Pumpkins.
I was going to say that this game I play of, hey, do you know what that is? That is, it's Smashing Pumpkins, and that's Sig Homie from the new album.
I was thinking that when it was weird, it was a weird sort of thought process going. When they played that riff, it was like, oh, this is like generic stoner rock. And then the lead comes in and went, oh, right, this sounds really close to like a Siamese Dream Smashing Pumpkins. So and then you're sort of going, and your head goes, I quite like to hear Billy Corgan now. And then Billy Corgan comes in, you go, Okay, this is great.
Had you heard
And you
that
start listening
before?
to it. I had, but not like quite passively.
Mm.
And then you start listening when it hits you. Sort of go. There's a point where you start listening to the drums. So Jimmy Chamberlain just does something really classy because he's such a classy, drummer. And you go, yeah. What hit me about that album, actually, in a weird way, in the saddest way, was that they never did what they did amazingly on Siamese Dreams and Infinite Sadness, which is, or Jimmy Chamberlain never did, and also I'd say Billy Corgan never did. They never had the ridiculously amazing drum fill that leads to this like really over the top 2-note guitar solo where he's just bending it, with an impossible effect on it, and which is sort of astonishing. Stuff on Siamese Dreams and Infinite in Melancholy.
So strangely, that hearing this song, it's A-listed on Six Music. That's how I know it.
Oh.
Which is surprising in itself. But I never really got Smashing Pumpkins. I loved Seaver, and I've mentioned before that I had a recording of it on VHS from The Beat, which was a program on about with Gary Crowley about 3 a.m, and then playing it live at Reading Festival. I never got anything else, and then they got so big. Or not as big as Nirvana, but in my world, suddenly everybody loves Smashing Pumpkins. And because I'm a twat, that meant I didn't listen to them. Because if everyone likes them, why would I like them? And then I'm not sure the trajectory, because I thought they kind of imploded. Then I thought Corgan sacked the rest of the band and released one album just with himself as Smashing Pumpkins that everyone hated. And then suddenly they seem to be back together. And I don't think the bassist is back with them. Is it Darcy something? But the rest of the band appears to be there, and I find it the reason I find this so intriguing, Sam, is that if Billy Corgan at one point went, no, I need to constantly reinvent myself, I need to boot the rest of the band out, I need to do this album by myself, and then comes back after all these years later with classic Smashing Pumpkins, because that's nothing new. I like the riff, I genuinely like the riff, but it's textbook Smashing Pumpkins, and I think I'm kind of all right with that.
Well, it's interesting, I think, I it's that thing of like, it's that question when a band who has been going down a different-ish trajectory since the late 90s, they had these two, there was a thing of like, they did 3 albums, all which evolved on each other, then they did a left turn, which was, Adore, which is when they lost their drummer Jimmy Chamberlain to heroin abuse, if my memory serves me correct. He didn't die. Dead. No, he didn't die. He got chucked out because he became useless.
Well, the keyboard player did OD, didn't he? I think.
Oh yeah, and
I think the two things were connected.
Yeah, and then he's sort of gone on like an experimental tangent. For, I don't know, 20 plus years.
Exactly, a long time.
And then they just seem to sort of like, it's the sound of a band jamming again, and actually sort of a coherent band sound rather than having pieced it together. And I don't know. And it's that curious thing of like, it's a very dangerous thing because it always, I don't know, I feel you sort of feel in two minds of a band of like, if they return to a sound that they are known for, does that can that stuff ever stand up to the classic stuff?
So other bands do this. I wonder if, rather than talking about it now, I'm going to add it to the list of ideas, and I'm going to call it bands trying to recapture early glories.
Let's do it next time. It's a good one.
It is good. Right, so what's our theme this week? Because it's one I've struggled with, if I'm honest. I've not found it easy.
Oh, no, I was going to abandon it and go for, like, best. They finally came good after loads of shit albums. That's not our theme. We can do that. That's another theme. They finally came good. It's a good one.
Shall I give you the title? Because in our discussions, the title does tend to change. Yeah. The title is NAF debut album, great follow-up.
Yeah, and basically that is sort of the theme of they released the first album. It was maybe a bit too much in the bedrooms and not enough in the garage in a way. and then they released a second album. You go, oh, okay, that is an impressive piece of work.
I absolutely follow the logic, but when I had to get some help from my band on this, which I'll mention later. But singer of my band, actually none of us sing. Hang on, sorry about that. Simon in my band said the first album is generally what gets the band signed. It's the cliche of it's years of being on the road, what used to be years of being on the road, and all the pain and anguish or joy of an entire life being distilled into one album. And then the second album tends to be we've run out of ideas because we're rich and we can't talk about how difficult it is. So finding a band, really easy to find a band with a cracking debut and a stodgy follow-up, but this way around is actually really challenging.
I mean, what I found was that it is challenging. You can either find it's either like they get good on their third, fourth, fifth album, and the first two are a bit like the ponderous or a bit too, sort of deferent to someone else's ideas.
Or you getting a bigger producer syndrome. So a bigger producer comes in second album and rides roughshod over everything.
Yeah, and so it can either go that way, or the first one is cracking, and then the second one takes a hit, and then they're back by the third or the fifth one, which is also another route that they sort of go, okay, that didn't work that well. But I just had a thought. I wanted to see something. I have maybe missed. I missed one. That's a stupid one. I should have put that one in. If you don't have it, I'm gonna put it forward. I don't know if the first album was good or bad, but the second album was a masterpiece.
Let's do notable mentions, non-mentions at the end. There were a couple that you chose that I was going to choose, and that never happens apart from with Against Me. But Against Me doesn't count here. There is no way Against Me counts for NAF debut. But the reason I've put NAF, it was originally fucking shit debut album, because I've put NAF because it's really hard to objectively say something is shit. I struggle with that. But let's go for your first choice, which is going to upset a lot. By the way, if you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, this episode... We love you. Please. This is like good cop, bad cop. We love you. Please subscribe and listen. And then you're like, fuck off. What wasting your time listening to this crap for? Oh man. Right. So let's go for your first choice, which is just going to say if people are listening, some of these choices is going to trigger them. I
think I went through quite a triggering route in some cases.
Oh, you spicy. Here's your first choice. Oh, it's finished. Okay. What was that bollocks?
That bollocks was Metallica with Creeping Death from the second album, Ride the Lightning, which I think has some of their strongest songs, and I think their original album, their debut album, Kill 'Em All, is shit.
That's amazing. I wouldn't have known. I just assumed that all mine are songs from the first albums, and I thought, shit, I could have made this a lot easier for myself by choosing songs off the albums that were good. So what was it with the first album that was terrible? I need objective fact rather than subjective opinion.
Oh no, I can't give you anything on objective fact. What kind of
podcast do you think this is?
Yeah, but also I have to say, just as like a philosophical perspective, as someone who has spent over 10 years now involved in reading post-structuralist philosophy, I really struggle with the concept of objective facts. Generally, it doesn't exist. But that's not to say things don't happen. It's not to say, but we can never approach that fact again in a pure form. We always come to it from a perspective. But Kill 'Em All, to me, sounds like some pretty subpar Iron Maiden riffs sped up, where they're not doing anything interesting and and the songwriting's a bit crap. James Hetfield sounds like his ball's just about to drop, and the only good thing about it is the first half of the Pulling Teeth Anastasia bass solo by Cliff Burton, who died after Master of Puppets, and everything about Ride the Lightning is not suggested in that first album. The riffs get better. They get impressively more obvious in a weird way, but also the way that they play them is incredible. And it's sort of Metallica do this amazing thing where all their riffs, you play their riffs. You're learning guitar, you're learning bass. You play their riff, and you go, really? That's what they're doing? And you go, fucking hell! To make that sound good is incredible. Rather than going, oh, those notes, sort of are impressive in themselves. No, the Metallica notes are crap. They've always been like dumb riffs, but to play them well is really sort of impressive. And to pull that off, and the vocals get better in Ride the Lightning. The album, the songwriting gets massively more dramatic, much more complex, much more interesting. Everything about Ride the Lightning is, there's not. I wouldn't say it's a great album, in fact, but it's got incredible songs on it. Some of the best stuff I ever wrote. Whereas I would rather piss on myself in the wind than listen to Kill 'Em All again. Really.
I'm going to get messages about this episode. I already know who from.
Yeah.
Which I love. Okay, so there's you telling everyone Metallica are awful, and I'm going to play my first choice, which I think most people can probably agree is objectively awful.
Sit round doing nothing all together very fast. Psychedelic stars throwing down cigars. They're picking up the joints now that they've joined the gang.
He's eating crisps at the outlet. They're just. Surely you know who that is. Come on, tell us who.
That Bonzo Dog Doodah Band. Bonzo Dog Band.
I don't know if you're being silly or not, but if you're not being silly, then that's actually really quite insightful. I think. Are you being silly, or is that actually your guess?
That's actually my guess. It's not the Beatles. It's not the Kinks.
It's David Bowie.
Fucking hell.
Just David Bowie's. He was in loads of bands before he hit it big. If anyone's seen the 5 years documentary, or whatever it's called, he had several cracks at it. But that is his first actual debut album from 1967, and that song is just bobbins. It's just crap.
I mean, there's an aspect of like sometimes you think about some. What was the second album then?
Second album, Space Oddity, I think. I'm just going to look up David Bowie discography. But the reason I said about you saying Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, there's a similar kind of music hall sort of element that I see in that. Bonzo, can't remember the singer's name, but Bonzo Dog Doodah Band did it much better. Much better.
It's it's. I mean, I always get the impression of David Bowie is really trying hard to do something different, and he's trying too hard for a long time, and then at some point he's just written so many things, and he just starts to write, for somehow the genius starts to come through, but it takes a long time for it to come through.
It really does. And that whole noise bit on that, and then him eating crisps, that's like when people are trying to be weird, sometimes I'm trying to think of a way of sanitizing this, but I've been at a music festival, sat around a campfire, and the sort of thing that people you don't know wander in, sit down and go, oh man, I'm so stoned, listen to this. And they'll just talk absolute crap. And you go, look, well, you're not stoned, you're just trying to be weird. And you're trying really hard and it doesn't work. Or when people try and be surreal and just don't understand what being surreal is, it really smacks of that. And I don't think any David Bowie fan would argue that that's his best work, or even listen to.
Yeah, it does smack of like A-level attempts at Bonzo Dog Doodah stuff.
That is exactly it. You have absolutely hit the nail on the head. So we will talk of David Bowie awful first album no more, and we'll play this. Didn't get it when I clipped it last night. Today, I really grooved to that. Who was that?
That was Black Midi with the song John L from their second album, Cavalcade. Cavalcade, yeah. I read that right. And that one really took me back to 2021. I half really like what Black Midi did in the last two albums. The other half, I don't know, something about the singer sort of rubs me up the wrong way. He sounds like he wants to be David Byrne. I don't know, like now, and it's sort of a bit too. But at the same time, they came out with that, and it was like, whoa, that's different, and that's interesting, and there's so much going on there, and it's all firing on all cylinders. And I even like his voice on that. And the Hellfire album, which was released like the year later, is also sort of excellent. It sort of doubles down on that sound. The first album is, to me, very derivative of it is a student album. It is sort of that first one they put together and they got signed, and it was, this is the sort of, and they're doing something that is, there's so many obvious points to it that you can sort of pick out and choose, and this is a noise bit, this is that. It doesn't have any personality of itself to it, whereas the second and third albums of Black Midi have a real definite sort of individualistic sort of perspective, and they're one of the few bands that I think modern bands and young bands that have managed to do that. And now Jordi Greet has got his new solo album coming up. Because I like Black Midi, I listened to his new stuff. Came up on my my Tidal sort of play stuff, and I'm sure it's getting played on Six Music. It's shit. It's like the reason why it sounds like the reason why they've gone on indefinite hiatus as a band, Black Midi. They're not playing together anymore. To me, it sounds like he brought that song in and they went, well, the music's not bad, but the lyrics are fucking terrible. Could you change that? And he's gone,
no, I will die on this hill.
I will die on this hill, and I'm more famous than the rest of you. I've got my own Wikipedia page. So fuck you guys. I'm going to go and get some studio musicians in and whack myself off into a sound booth.
What a summary. When Black Midi first came about, I just kind of went, yeah, what is that? And then there's loads of bands like Squid, Sports Team. They sort of, Snapped Ankles. God, there's just loads of bands came about, and I'd never really made the Talking Heads connection before, but yeah, it's absolutely a Talking Heads connection, and it's a willful weirdness again, like the Bowie thing, that some bands carry off and some don't.
Yeah,
and that little clip is just wonderful. I really like that, and I'm going to go back and listen to Black Midi again. They got huge. They got really like genuinely big band.
And it's one of those questions you always have, like, how did they get massive when a lot of other shit that we listen to never gets anywhere?
My theory is there you go. This is my big music theory. There is several stratas of music types. There's down at the bottom, you got people who want to appeal to the lowest common denominator. They want to be Taylor Swift or Ed Sheeran. They just want to be massive, and that forces them to make bland music that takes no chances. These bands are seen in pubs all throughout the country, is often playing on Sunday afternoon, and no one's paying any attention. And they'll do it for 20 years before they then join a covers band and properly give up on life. There's bands who appreciate that stuff has to have an appeal, but they're just there's something odd about them as human beings, or they have very wide music tastes, or they're sensible enough to start a band where everyone in the band has different music tastes. Those bands tend to be really good, and they tend to have quite good longevity. Then at the top, you've got bands that just come from outer space. Absolutely. Where did that come from? At the moment, Black Dog are doing that in a really big way. They're getting huge in the UK, and they're doing Middle Eastern inspired, non-European scales, techno. I don't know what it is. Completely from outer space. Absolutely. Like, what? Where did that come from? And it's getting huge. There ends my lecture on music.
Are you thinking of Top Dog?
No, Big Dog.
Big Dog.
Big Dog. I have played them on here before.
I listened. They got a bit of hype, and I listened to. Hold on. I think we're getting it wrong, because there's a band called Big Dog, who are a band composed of the members of Black Grape, and I don't think it's them.
I'm Fat Dog. Dear God.
Fat Dog.
Fat Dog is what they're called.
I listened to it, and there was something that, again, it's like, you can a vocalist can either be like, it's interesting because there's this sort of British cockiness to it, like little man in the pub who has a Napoleon complex. I know Napoleon wasn't that short, but the complex is called Napoleon complex, and wants to be big, and he wants to be tough, and there's this aspect to that, and there's that performance of an English singer sort of happens or vocalist happens quite a lot, and it happens with something like Slaves, but with Slaves, I sort of feel like they have enough sort of self-knowledge to carry it off, that they don't sound unaware, sort of cocky with a lack of self-awareness in a weird way. Whereas, I don't know, the Fat Dog vocalist just sort of, I don't know, it was that point of like, the music's interesting, but you sound like you believe yourself too much. It's like you smell of your own bullshit too much.
It is strange that nobody is talking about the lyrics and the themes of the songs, because from what I can figure out, there's a lot of talk about guns and you're going to get shot, better get out the way, call me when the shooting starts. It's that you watch out, but which the delivery is quite dry and quite kind of laid back. It's not aggressive, but I'm not sure the songs are very nice. Do you know what I mean? And what you're saying, I kind of see that. I quite like that their web address is fatdog.com. Just because why not? I'd like to believe.
Fair play, guys. That's a good one.
I'd like to believe that it's all ironic or something, or a pastiche. Because I think slaves, soft play as they now are.
Soft play, right? Yeah.
That was quite. I run hot and cold on
misgendering someone. It's awful.
I run hot and cold on them quite a lot, but having learned a few things about them recently and seen little snippets of their live performances, I think there is something interesting there. And the last song on the new album is fucking brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It sounds like when Against Me first signed to a major, there's a few B-sides where they got some violins in. Basically, I think they just had money and they just said to their mates that we've been friends for years. We can now give you some money to come and play on a record. And the last track on the Soft Play album is worth a listen. It really surprised me. I didn't even know it was them. It got played on Six Music, and I was like, this is really, really good, and I don't know who it is. So there you go. We played Black Midi and talked about lots of other stuff, but we need to hammer on because we're 40 minutes in. So here's my next choice. God, that's boring, isn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna. I had not listened to the. One of the hardest things about this was actually going, oh, I don't really know what that album sounds like. I haven't listened to that album enough to know how shit it is.
Well, I've chosen naff rather than shit because that song's just boring, and it's so. Looking back, it's so a record label's attempt to cash in on a popular sound because it's got that real sweet, mushy, saccharine, pre-Britpop indie sound. That is the sound of indie. One of the saving graces of that song, though, is Tory cheesemaker Alex James's bass line, which is just wonderful. I wish I knew how he plays bass, how he writes stuff, because it's brilliant. But that first album was, by their own admission, pretty run-of-the-mill indie. There are a couple of standout things, and we have talked about them before, but I can't say it's shit because it was so important to me as a teenager. Absolutely loved it, and it really cemented my love of music. But it ain't great.
No. Boring. It's boring. Yeah. I mean, I miss my... I've not told you about this before, but I miss my... I'd rather have my CD of Rapper's Delight back rather than the actual... access to the actual one.
Just tell us the story really briefly because it's so wonderful.
Oh, when I was a kid living in Portugal, there was a record shop above the supermarket. I'm not going to make this short. And I was really into Blur, and I begged my mum, can I have the first album? I really want the first album. Really, really, mum, please. And she sort of relented because she's a kind-hearted woman who had a very annoying child. And got it home and put it on, and it was Rapper's Delight.
Was it like printing the CD was printed?
The CD printed Blur and everything, and it was obviously a factory mistake. And I wonder how many they made before they caught the issue. And then I was like talking to my brother about it, and he asked his friend, who was sort of his reference for sort of music knowledge, and the guy said, "Well, they did have a very different sound."
Yeah, a lot more into the hip hop on the first album. Classic
80s hip hop. They like none of this gangster or sort of Tribe Called Quest stuff that was going around at the time. We want to go back to Rapper's Delight days.
We want to go back to, they don't sound like they're from Colchester on that first album. They sound a lot more kind of like Brooklyn or Harlem or somewhere.
New York.
Brilliant. Right, let's play your next track, which is nothing like Blur. Oh,
one of my favourite lines on that whole album is, I should have never I should have never less. I should have never been let out of the motherfucking microwave.
Never let out the microwave. So who was that?
That is Gwar, with the album "Scumdogs of the Universe," and it's their second album.
That track's called. We'll come to that in a minute.
Salmonizer.
I assume that if you're eating some or creating some sort of dish and you wished it tasted more like salmon, you'd need a salmonizer.
They sort of did a left field sort of first album. Don't know, just a bit crap and a bit all over the place. And they seem like a joke band and a local band that's never going to really sort of get much further than the local sort of art scene at the time. And then they come out with this sort of crossover thrash late 80s thing, and it's good pop songs, good metal songs, good sort of crossover songs, with this really sort of quite dark, quite challenging sense of humor to it. Very late 80s, very sort of gore obsessed, but with a sort of it's that sort of art that tries to show society's face back at itself by being ridiculously ugly. And they did a great job of it.
I remember them. I had one friend who was into metal, Anthony, when I was at school, and I can remember we were allowed to take tapes into our art exams. You're like You're in a room. In my case, drawing a pencil drawing of Sizewell B Power Station, but you're allowed to take tapes in with personal stereos back when they had these little foam things, because I'm an old bastard. So we'd trade tapes, and I gave him, oh God, I can't remember. And in the exam, he gave me a Gwar album, and I can remember being really confused by it, because I was like, the music, didn't like metal at the time, but the music, I mean, it's bouncy, it's fine, it's doing something. But it was the lyrics I had a massive problem with. I can remember like hearing one of the songs and going, what the hell did he just say? Unfolding the cassette thing, and the lyric was, "Come here, little boy, I'm feeling horny." And I can remember just going, stop, this can fuck off. Just no, I want no part of anything like this at all. And I still don't get that kind of humour, if I'm honest. Or are they just trying to be deliberately horrible?
I think, I watched the very good documentary on them, or pretty good documentary, not amazing documentary, but good documentary, very worthwhile watching if you are interested in Gwar. And they are of a very, they were at least back then, I think they've sort of changed a little bit now, because the headman, the sort of the front man has changed, because Brocky, the original guy, died. I think a heroin overdose, if I remember correctly. They are one of those bands who it is sort of an art project, comic book, grotesque, but also sort of like holding up the worst of America to itself in a way.
Okay. So that is more.
If you can justify, if you can justify sort of the art through that, which I do think there's for me that's sort of an okay sort of perspective. I think there's a worthwhile sort of project within that, I think I also, I'm also very uncomfortable with some of the lyrics, but I also think they serve to ask that question of like, why are we uncomfortable with that? And, what do people get away with that we have got used to so much of?
Yeah, I didn't get that depth when I was 15-year-old sat in me.
Oh, I probably didn't either. But I'm we're 25. I'm 25 years away from the point where I've first discovered Gwar, so I've had a bit of time to think about being challenged by art.
I was probably, my mind was elsewhere because I just snogged Rebecca, somebody, just before going back into the exam, and the style at the time was to wear these huge thick knit jumpers. These jumpers were massive. This is grunge era. And the sleeves were huge, so I used to store stuff in the sleeves. And I remember I had a can of Coke, and I went to give her a snog, and I ripped my arm around like that and clonked her on the back of the head while I was kissing her. And then she dumped me. Not because of that. Or maybe it was. I did go out with her sister a couple of years before that. Anyway, let's move on to the next thing, which is this. This is a suggestion by one of my bandmates. That's solo.
That is a solo of I don't know what I'm doing in this part either.
I'm going to just... It's not even like late... Right, do you know who that was before we go any further?
Is that Slayer?
It's Slayer, yeah. And the track is Black Magic, which I asked ChatGPT to tell me what the worst Slayer song ever made was. And it said, well, that's subjective. But it was like, that's subjective, but it's probably Black Magic. And then went on to explain why. But yeah, that solo, I've always thought Kerry Keen's solos are a bit random.
Kerry King?
Kerry King? Who's Kerry Keen?
I don't know.
But yeah, I can't really say much to that, but thanks to my bandmates for suggesting that. But I tried to do a bit of research, and they're saying that it's just because the first album's just a bit more of a rip-off of Venom and some other bands are at the time. It's not as fast as later stuff. It's just not as thought out.
I mean, to me, that solo tells you everything you need to know about Kerry King solos, which is they're shit. They work. And we'll get to, I think, is it my last choice next?
It's your last choice next, yeah.
Yeah, I go with that because Kerry King's on this one as well.
He is. I'm just making a note. Right, so here is your last choice. I've just got to say that I know I'm positive and all that, but I like the little I like the guitar riff after the solo. But
that's good. I was going to say that. I was like, that's tight. That's a cool riff. Yeah.
It's also the first time I've ever actually heard a bass guitar in any Slayer. So let's go with your last choice.
No sleep till.
Didn't Gwar cover this?
I don't know. I mean, it's not like if you're a 15-year-old boy or younger, and I'd say particularly boy, there's a certain level of excitement because there's sort of I don't know if it lasts well. You know, it's sort of a long-lasting infantilism to that album. This is the Beastie Boys, License to Ill. But my God, that album is shit, and the music is shit compared to what they would do in the next sort of 5-6 albums. It's just...
That's why I never listened to them. That's why I never listened to them. I had some old bullshit which I've had since I was a teenager, and I loved it because it's just ratty hardcore, and it's genuinely experimental weirdness. Like just not the David Bowie being deliberately weird. It is people fucking around with tape machines for their own amusement without any particular goal to actually release it, and that's really interesting. But this album, especially having seen the Beastie Boys documentary, I can see why they don't like it, because they didn't really make it, did they? They sort of did a bit of, to be honest, fairly shonky rapping on it, and then they were off on tour, came back, and Rick Rubin and the other person just went, "Here's your album, we're going to release it," and they were like, "What? We've made an album?"
and I just think it is a shadow of what they would otherwise become. I went through a period where I enjoyed it because I thought, there's a level of enjoying it ironically these days, I would say. And but it's just, I know, like, you take away like when that riff is cool riff, but then you take away when the rap comes in, it just sounds a bit pony. Actually, it just sounds a bit shit, and I don't know. It's just not on par with what they. It's not, it doesn't suggest what they would become and how clever they were as songwriters and
how mindfully they
rappers.
did that, how deliberate they were about it. That first album wasn't deliberate. It was.
No.
They released Cookie Puss, which was it's like a dub thing that somehow got popular, and they made friends with Rick Rubin and just started hanging out with him. I mean, I'm not going to tell the whole story. Watch the documentary. It is amazing. Second album, I've become obsessed with those YouTube videos where it says, here's an album, here's all the songs that were sampled in it. So the second Beasties album, I watched one of them. My God, there's a lot of samples. I don't know who had to do sample clearance for that. And I've listened to that second album again. It's all right. It's getting it there, but it's still them using producers to do the heavy lifting. Third album, where they all went, we're going to learn our instruments. It's still got a bit of looseness to it. I think it's one of those albums that's got too many tracks. But some of the stuff on there, like Gratitude, is just, oh my God, I love it so much.
I mean, I would say almost all rap albums of the era had too many fucking tracks in them.
Yeah.
Just give us 40 minutes, 30 minutes.
That's enough. Stuff. I said, did Gwar cover it? And I had in my head that Gwar covered No Sleep Till Brooklyn and called it No Sleep Till Bedtime. I've just looked it up. It was actually, I don't know if this will mean anything to you. It was actually covered by Morris Minor and the Majors. Does that mean anything to you? Morris Minor and the Majors, and they called it stutter rap, which is probably one of the most offensive things that Rimmer from Red Dwarf has ever done. I've forgotten his fucking name. Oh man,
Chris Berry.
Chris Berry. This was huge. It's called stutter rap, and it probably is a little offensive. But I don't know how I got Gwar and Rimmer from Red Dwarf kind of confused up as being the same thing in my head, because they're clearly not. But there you go. So I'll leave it to the listeners and the viewers to look up stutter rap if they've never heard it, because you will find it. So here is my last choice.
Please forget the words that I just played. It wasn't me, it was a stranger cooling down. It keeps rattling my cage, and there's nothing in this world will keep it down.
do you know who that is? Listening to that, being the age I am, that could be any one of hundreds of bands from the early 90s.
Yeah, it's Generic Plodding Indie.
Do you know who it is?
The band Generic Plodding Indie?
Generic Plodding Indie. That's Radiohead. Honest to God, that is Radiohead. And
I can hear that in the voice. Yeah.
You can a bit, but that is, just like I said about Blur, that is a plodding bag of nonsense that just does not reveal what's going to come in the future.
No, that's fair.
My client's just turned up for a meeting. Just say hello, Carl.
Hello, Carl.
Hello, Carl.
No, sorry, we are recording, but we'll be done. We'll be done in a minute.
Oh, is this going to be edited out?
No, we'll leave it in. I can't be asked to edit this. No, not a chance. Right, so that was my last choice, and I'm going to wrap it up there. So, good episode. I'm going to do a bit of editing on this just to see if people like it, and I'm also going to do a reveal at the start, telling people what we're going to be talking about. So, if I can be bothered. So, thank you for listening, everyone. I'm going to say goodbye. Sam, do you want to say goodbye? No.